It's kind of bringing in an element of power play, in my opinion.
This is a very pointed sort of lyric.
What are heavy words?
Not only is her art validated, but her personhood, her existential significance is now validated.
I personally think that the you here is personifying success.
This deals with consumption. Venom tastes sweet. Her body is her weapon. It's her bait. It's the distraction before she goes in for the metaphorical kill.
The protagonist finally found success, the life that she believes she was meant to live. Hi everyone, welcome to this video. On my channel, I analyze song lyrics very in-depth through the lens of literary analysis. Today, we're going to be continuing our analyses of Lana Del Rey lyrics. We're going to be analyzing the song Radio. I will make sure to link all of my Lana Del Rey analyses so far. I've analyzed quite a few so far, and there's more to come, so I would consider subscribing if I were you. Just a thought. Here's a list of literary terms I may refer to throughout this video, and as always, everything I state is just my own personal opinion. Music is subjective, and I always love hearing your perspective down below in the comments. Let's get started. Also, PSA, if my sleeve does weird things, it's not ripped. This is just like the style. It's like this, so it's intentional, okay? Fashion. This is a statement, okay? And I don't know what statement it is because this is not a sleeve analysis channel. It is a lyric analysis channel. Let's begin. So the radio plays music that's very popular or highly requested. I think the radio was maybe more significant back in the day before streaming and before TikTok, because now musical artists have other avenues to get their music out in front of audiences. However, if your song is on the radio, it's put on a platform and it allows for a large group of people to hear it. If you're a newer artist, it allows you to grow your audience, grow your fan base. It can really catapult your career. And as a new artist, having your song on the radio, I would assume that perhaps it can legitimize your work a little bit more. It's like more official if it's on the radio because your work is getting validated. It's good enough to be played on the radio. I believe the protagonist of this song is a musical artist, so for them, I would assume that getting their song on the radio, especially for the first time, is a big deal, kind of like an I've made it moment. To me, the song is about fame. However, if we want to try to connect with it in a more intimate way, we can also think about this song as discussing success, making out of your hometown metaphorically, kind of like Sandy Fink from Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion. Verse 1. I believe the they here is an ambiguous they. It's referring to anyone who's ever doubted the protagonist. So it could be anyone from their past. And that also signifies to me that people have tried to stop her or doubt her before. Perhaps that was a recurring pattern in the protagonist's life. So what can't they stop her from doing now? This is open to interpretation, of course. For me, I think that they can't stop her from pursuing and excelling in her career. They can't stop her from believing what she wants and leading the lifestyle that she wants. And I think that's because now the protagonist has reached a certain level of success. Her song is on the radio, right? It's like her talent is validated. Her artistry can now also be a business. Right? And you know, the integrity of art and music is very important, but if you want it to be your career, you need to have the business aspect on lock as well so you can make a living. And I think for the protagonist, having her song on the radio is her getting to that point where she's realizing that she can now actually make a living by creating art. Boy, I'll be flying overhead, going from place to place because the protagonist is probably booked and busy now, and perhaps they're on a private jet now. That's another way to look at it. It's also important to look at this spatially because the protagonist is higher up than the people that were bringing her down, but more metaphorically, the protagonist is in an elevated space, mentally elevated, emotionally elevated. The mindset may be different now. Her financial situation may be different now, right? Her career is in a place where she has more stability. There's a lot of different ways you can look at this. I also love how it says flying overhead because there's movement. right? She's not just like floating overhead, she's flying. She has somewhere to go. She's in transit. Movement and liveliness is very important in life. If you stagnate, literally or metaphorically, it's not healthy. So I love the fact that the protagonist is spatially overhead all of these people. What I love more is that she's moving and she's also flying. I know that this is probably referring to a plane, but if you want to think about flying like a superhero, that's also very positive too. I know a lot of people have dreams where they're flying through the air. And I'm not an expert on dream interpretations, but I've heard that dream can be indicative that you feel in control of your life, you feel free. It's a pretty positive sort of dream, if I'm not mistaken. So that's also another way you can look at that lyric. The protagonist is saying their words can't bring me down. So what are heavy words? Heavy words can have a negative connotation. We talk about that sometimes on this channel. They can be explicit insults where there is no doubt that the words or phrases are heavy. But we can also have more subtle, passive-aggressive comments. I personally think that words matter a lot, especially in analysis. I say that diction is the most important thing to me. It is so important in my opinion, but also within the context of your own life, words matter. I know that a lot of people don't really think that necessarily. There's a saying, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. That's valid when you compare words to someone physically harming another person. But I think the words that you tell yourself and the words that are surrounding you are very important because words are not just words. Words represent ideas and ideas create your life. And if you're a person who's stuck in a situation where everyone around you is telling you very negative things, I personally think it's going to have an effect on you. I think it's going to affect your subconscious mind, which is always working in the background to create your self-image, your beliefs, etc. So I think that being around heavy words is very damaging. And if you are able to get yourself out of that space where those heavy words are, I think it can be very beneficial for you. So I place a lot of value in what the protagonist is saying here. I think heavy words can definitely bring someone down. I personally think that heavy words can actually be very dangerous. So I'm happy that the protagonist is no longer in a space where those heavy words can affect her. We do have repetition of the word boy here. This could be referring to a specific person, or it could just be a figure of speech that's used in casual conversation, which is the interpretation I'm more partial towards. The last line here says that the protagonist has been raised from the dead. If they were raised from the dead, it means that they previously felt dead. Let's talk about a metaphorical death now. So if the protagonist felt metaphorically dead, this could be referring to her mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, etc. She felt lifeless, right? Perhaps lacking purpose, perhaps feeling very defeated. I would think about someone who is very far away from their true purpose and very far away from doing the things that they know they're meant to do. That's how I would think about someone who is metaphorically dead. But now it sounds like the protagonist has been resurrected, right? They now have a second chance at life. The last line here shows me that the protagonist feels alive now. The protagonist is experiencing liveliness and vitality, which is very positive. Verse 2. No one even knows how hard life was. I'm assuming this is referring to the protagonist's life before her song was on the radio, before she found success as a musical artist. And again, we can also think about this as relating to our own lives, about finding success ourselves. It can be career success. It can be emotional success. You're working through something, you're healing from an experience you had. It can be changing your mindset. It could be a mental sort of success. A lot of times, success, I think, is portrayed as being out in the public, like you got a promotion and that could be successful to you and you're telling all your friends and they're celebrating. That's wonderful. But I think a lot of times we can be successful in private. You're healing from trauma. You're changing the way you think. You're exploring yourself and finding ways to express yourself. Those are other ways you can be successful in your own personal life. Not every form of success has to be out in the open and out in public. I think a lot of times when people see that you're successful, they think that it all came naturally to you and it all came very easily to you. And for some people that may be true. Some people maybe got really lucky, but for a lot of people, they reached success through a lot of hard work, through failure, through falling down and getting back up again. We've all seen those posts on Instagram where it's like, success is not linear. It looks like this with peaks and valleys. You know, that's true. I think some people are mindful of that when viewing success stories, but there are also some people who just can't grasp that there's a lot of hard work behind everything that exists. Just because someone is dressed up really well and they're performing for you and it looks easy for them, it doesn't mean that comes naturally to them like 100% of the time. There's rehearsals, getting over stage fright, hiring the right stylist, finding out what aesthetic works for you, which may sound like fun, but it's also like a science. If you're someone who's in the commercial space, like if you're an artist, those things are very, very important. Your image matters. So there's a lot of things that go on behind a successful person and a successful like musician, for example. You know, all that glitters is not gold. I think that's what that first lyric is referring to. And I would imagine too, if you're a musical artist trying to make it, it's difficult in a different way, because if you're writing your own lyrics and creating your own music, you're very intimately bonded with your work. And if someone doesn't like your music, I would assume that it's hard not to take that personally, because your music is an extension of you. It's like you believe in something so much and you want people to have access to it. It's kind of like you're screaming out into a void, a vacuum, and no one can hear you. You're like, I have this beautiful song. There's just like no one there to listen to it. That's how I would think about the hardness of life before the success. So that's the more business and emotional type of hardship the protagonist may have faced. However, we can also think about financial hardships, just life circumstance things, social context as well. This is also something that's really important that not a lot of people talk about super often. But if someone finds success, the people that they hang out with may change. They're in a higher social class now. There's a saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. When you know people within your industry and any sort of career, it's going to be beneficial for you. That's why there's so many networking events within every single industry. The people the protagonist is connected with now will allow her to have more opportunities and to grow. Those are a few things that I'm thinking about, and please keep in mind I'm listing those things and explaining them pretty broadly. All of these things are filled to the brim with nuanced situations. I don't even think about it now because I finally found you. This is where things get even more interesting in my opinion. First of all, when it says the protagonist doesn't think about their hard life anymore, that suggests to me that the protagonist is far removed from her past life. What I find really interesting is the word you. Who is the protagonist referring to here? They could be referring to a specific person. Maybe they found love and romance as well as success in their career. I personally think that the you here is personifying success. The protagonist finally found success. The protagonist finally found the life that she believes she was meant to live. Another way you can think about it is that the protagonist is referring to herself. She finally found her true self and she's living her truth as an artist. That also resonates with me, but I think the interpretation I'm the most partial towards is that the protagonist is personifying success and the new lifestyle she has. Oh, sing it to me. This is also really interesting. This kind of reminds me of Lorde. I think it was in the Louvre where she says, broadcast the boom, 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 and make them all dance to it. There's a few different ways to interpret this. So this could be referring to the song the protagonist has on the radio. Just like, oh, sing me the song that I have on the radio. You know the words because it's on the radio. This could also be a little bit more meta, where the protagonist is telling you to sing the song that she's singing right now back to her. And this is kind of like sassy a little bit. It's kind of bringing in an element of power play in my opinion, because he assumes you'll already know the lyrics to the song she's singing right now, because the chorus is going to come up next, which is usually the part of the song that most people are familiar with, generally speaking. Or she could be calling out her haters that were mentioned in the previous verse. She's like, yeah, sing my song back to me. You were bringing me down. Now you have all of my songs memorized. How does that feel? There's a lot of different ways to think about it. The way I feel about oh, sing it to me is that it's a little bit sassy, which I appreciate. I enjoy sass and sarcasm quite a bit. I find it quite satisfying in very particular instances. I do go back and forth with which interpretation of this lyric resonates with me. Each time I listen to this song, I think about it in a slightly different way, but it's usually one of the ways I just mentioned. I would really want to know what you think about that lyric and how you interpret it, so feel free to leave me a comment down below. Chorus. Now my life is sweet like cinnamon. Okay, let's discuss this lyric. So cinnamon is a spice. It can be sweet, but it can also be spicy. That's in the flavor profile of cinnamon if you look it up. I actually discussed that when I analyzed Lana's song Cinnamon Girl. I will link that analysis below if you're interested. Are these songs related? I don't necessarily think so. I don't believe those two songs are related because Cinnamon Girl came out a lot later than this song did. If those songs were reversed, if Cinnamon Girl came out way before Radio did, then I would have an interpretation for that, because there would be a difference in the use of the word cinnamon. Instead of talking about a romantic relationship, it would be talking about career and life, which would be an interesting progression. However, that's not the case, so that's why I personally don't believe those songs are related. What I also enjoy about the lyric, "Now my life is sweet like cinnamon," is that cinnamon is a spice, which means it's not always necessary. It's something a little extra, right? It enhances the flavor. We can extrapolate that out a little bit. The protagonist here could be referring to adding extra things into her life for enjoyment. So she could be talking about luxury. There's extra things available to her now. So that's another way to think about it. That kind of extrapolates out from the word cinnamon. But I think overall the protagonist is expressing that her life is sweeter now, it's better now, it's more enjoyable. If you want to think about cinnamon as being a foreshadow, you can, because the flavor profile is not 100% sweet. It is sometimes referred to as spicy. It all depends on how you want to interpret the song and what resonates with you, but I did want to mention that as well. The protagonist feels like they're living in a dream. When I think about dreaming, I think about dreaming when you're asleep or daydreaming while you're awake. When you're daydreaming while you're asleep, it can be positive or negative. You can have good dreams or you can have nightmares. When we're thinking about daydreaming during the day, it's different because you often have more control over your daydreams. You're usually daydreaming about an ideal that you want, about a life that you wish you had, or maybe about goals that you're pursuing at the moment. A daydream can be more idyllic. It can be close to perfect. So that's the sort of dreaming I think is being referred to here. Her former daydream is now her reality. Baby, love me because I'm playing on the radio. So this could be a genuine statement made by the protagonist, or it could potentially be a little bit sassy and throwing some shade. The protagonist could really be thinking like this. They could think that now that their song is on the radio, they actually have value as a person. That's not a healthy way to think about things, and that would make me feel really sad, but that is a possibility. And listen, I'm, again, not a psychologist, but I personally think that when you're deprived of acceptance, love, and being treated with respect, which I think this protagonist has experienced due to the lyrics in the first verse, when you're deprived of those sorts of things, any newfound attention, applause, and admiration can be welcomed in without a second thought. It's something that I believe just happens subconsciously because you're going from one extreme to another. When you're lacking being treated in a respectful manner, and then you get catapulted where your song is on the radio, those are opposite ends of a continuum. So this could be very genuine, and the protagonist may actually believe this due to her past experiences. The protagonist saying that no one knows how hard her life was suggests that there were a lot of things maybe going on that were very difficult for her to deal with. Again, going from one extreme to another, people respond to it in different ways. The other interpretation that I'm thinking about is that this lyric is a little sassy and throwing some shade.
Congratulations, if you've noticed my hair is up now. You're very observant. So another way to approach this lyric is that the protagonist could be a little sassy and they could be throwing some shade. Since she's on the radio now, it's like she finally exists as a person. Not only is her art validated, but her personhood, her existential significance is now validated. And she's like, yeah, you're gonna love me now? I was existing this whole time. The radio did not activate my existence. You're gonna love me now, I guess. Okay. That's an alternative way to view it. And of course, lots of other interpretations exist as well. So it could be genuine, or it could be kind of like a social commentary sort of vibe as well. Then it says, how do you like me now? This lyric makes me think the previous lyric is a little bit sassy and a little maybe on the social commentary side. But again, open to your interpretation. When it says, how do you like me now, it's kind of spoken. It's not sung the same way the rest of the lyrics are. And again, it could be a genuine statement going with what I said earlier as coming from someone who's a little bit more insecure as a result of their past experiences, or it could be throwing some shade, again, some sprinkles of social commentary. I think the fact that it's spoken to me brings it out of the fantasy of the song, and it kind of not necessarily breaks the fourth wall, but it makes it more serious in my opinion. It makes me want to listen to what's being said more. Since this lyric is spoken, I place a different sort of significance on it. So I'm more inclined to view this as throwing some shade, but I would love to hear what you think. Look me up and take me like a vitamin. I will say when Lana sings this, she says vitamin, like the British pronunciation. I don't know if that's like intentional, if that's supposed to be like a clue, or if that's just simply how it fit into the song better. But let's talk about it. So lick me up and take me like a vitamin. This deals with consumption. consumption. Protagonist is telling other people to consume her. She is nutritionally healthy though, she's a vitamin, so that's good. I talked a lot about consumption in my analysis of the song The Louvre by Lorde, so you can check that out if you'd like. It'll be linked down below. I think whenever consumption is present in songs, it gets really interesting. Let's talk about lick me up first. So lick me up could be a suggestive sort of phrase. It's a little bit sensual, so it could be directed at one person or just not. It could be directed to a large group of people as well. Or if you want to interpret this as not super suggestive, it could deal with the idea of consumption. Taking a vitamin is literal consumption, but we can extrapolate that out to metaphorical consumption about how the protagonist is kind of like a product now because their aesthetic, their image, their vibe is something that is going to bring in money and sell records. So people do consume the protagonist in a way. I will say though, you normally don't lick vitamins. There are some vitamins that will dissolve in your mouth, but as far as I'm concerned, there's no vitamins that are meant to be licked. When I think about licking a sort of food, I think about like a lollipop or maybe a popsicle. I think more about candy, which is not nutrient dense like a vitamin is supposed to be. So just the diction there is interesting to me. Those types of candies are also suggestive. So I do tend to interpret this lyric as kind of suggestive, as kind of sensual. For me, that's what the intent is. But again, it's open to interpretation. For me, I think this lyric is very sassy. And I will confess to you, I interpret a lot of lyrics as sassy because I myself am kind of sassy sometimes in a respectful way. But I, in my personal life, am very sarcastic and very sassy. So I do have a natural inclination to interpret things in that way. So this could not be the intent. This is just how I feel about it. But I feel like that's a little bit like that. And I think the intent here for me is that it's like sassy, but it's also like throwing a little bit of shade, and there's a sprinkle of social commentary in there a little bit because this shows awareness. The fact that this is stated in a pretty suggestive way, in my opinion, and the fact that there's a mention of a vitamin which can be beneficial to you nutritionally, that's a juxtaposition in my opinion, because you wouldn't lick a vitamin, you would lick candies, which are not good for you. Those two things don't necessarily go together. So the suggestive nature of this lyric and the fact that, in my opinion, there's a juxtaposition here which brings forth a feeling of unbalance. I personally think this is like a very pointed sort of lyric because the protagonist is aware that people perhaps want her because they're attracted to her. They want to consume her maybe because they enjoy her vibe, they enjoy her aesthetic, her music, but maybe they also want to consume her in a more suggestive manner as well. For me, this is the protagonist in a moment of power a little bit, being like, I recognize this is happening, and she's kind of just like throwing it back out there at the people. It's not like an attack or anything, it's not like intense, but it's kind of like a little bit playful. It's like a playful sort of awareness, in my opinion. I would really love to know what you think about that, so feel free to let me know down below. The thing is that she could just say, take me like a vitamin, but she said, lick me up right before it, which is not a necessary part of taking a vitamin, so there's a lot of intent behind this lyric, in my personal opinion. Now she's saying her body is sweet like sugar venom. This is really interesting. So remember when I talked about the word lick, I talked about how you would normally lick like a lollipop or other sorts of candy, maybe. I think about that when I see the words sweet and sugar in the next line. First, let's talk about this without the word venom. Her body is sweet like sugar. Her body is something to be consumed, right? It's something sweet. When you think about something sweet, not within the context of the protagonist's body, but just generally speaking, it's something enjoyable. It's something maybe cute, pleasant. You just want to be around sweetness. Sometimes if it's a person, if it's food, you can get addicted to sweetness. Too much sweetness is not good for you, but you still want it. However, if you consume too much sweetness food-wise, it can make you sick. You'll get a sugar high, but then you'll crash really badly. It can bring you a temporary sort of happiness. However, the sweetness can kind of trick you in a way as well. To me, again, this is showing that the protagonist is aware about how perhaps the public is viewing her and her body and the fact that they want her in that suggestive way. So venom is poison secreted by an animal, like a snake. Her venom tastes sweet, right? So it's like her body is her weapon. It's her bait. It's the distraction before she goes in for the metaphorical kill. There's a saying that says you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. That's something that comes to mind when I read this because you can lure in people with sweetness. And the protagonist here is saying that her body is sweet. Her body is something that people may crave, something they want to consume, something that they want to be around. So for the protagonist, maybe in her career, she's become some sort of a sensual symbol. The word venom to me has a bit of a violent connotation. There's an intent behind that word. This makes me think of revenge a little bit. The protagonist has awareness that there's a certain group of people that are valuing her maybe more because of her sweet body and not as much because of her art. And that's obviously not a pleasant thing to be aware of. It's an important thing to be aware of. Like, it's good that she knows this, but it's not a super chill situation. So I think a little bit about revenge, or I think about kind of weaponizing her sweetness, her sweet body, or maybe she's not plotting revenge or doing anything like that. But to me, this is showing awareness. She can't control necessarily how other people view her body. She can't control the ways in which people want to consume her. But the awareness she has is a weapon. She's realizing that people are treating her differently now, and she's not being bamboozled by it. If need be, she can release the venom and protect herself. It's kind of like poisonous animals being very colorful. Instead of the protagonist being colorful here, her body is luring in people. But the sweetness here is poison. And perhaps she's saying vitamin not because of the nutritional benefit, but because you have to swallow it in one take. You don't like enjoy it leisurely. You consume it very quickly. So that could be another layer to it as well. Thinking about like female spiders and how they lure in a male to mate with, and then they just like casually kill them. That's what this reminds me of. Baby love me because I'm playing on the radio. How do you like me now? There's repetition of those two lyrics, but those two lyrics stated right after lick me up like a vitamin because my body's sweet like sugar venom hits different. It really, really does. Now it sounds like she's taunting them. She's like, I have awareness of this. I have a weapon. I'm luring you in. You think you're trying to consume me? Well, joke's on you. So to me, the repeated lyrics here, the last two lines of the chorus, are kind of, again, kind of like sassy, kind of like filled to the brim with awareness. Like you're playing coy, but you know what's going on. You know what I mean? Verse 3.
I interrupt this video with a very special message from myself. This is sponsored by me. I want to let you guys know that I'm offering services on the website Fiverr. I'm offering a few different things. I can help you refine your own analysis skills to develop your own unique perspective about poetry, about song lyrics, about any written work. I've also been getting a lot of messages from you guys letting me know that you use my videos to help you learn English. So if you need an English conversation partner, I'm your girl. We can converse through the internet. I can help you with pronunciation, sentence structure, and random things about American culture that are not super intuitive. If you're a songwriter or a poet and want me to read your original piece of work and provide you with a very detail-oriented feedback, I can do that as well. All that information is going to be linked down below. If you have any questions about any of the services I'm offering, please message me directly through the website Fiverr. Back to the video that you actually clicked here for.
I think about the American dream as anyone being able to achieve whatever they want as long as they're willing to work hard for it. Opportunities are for everyone. The protagonist is saying that her American dreams came true. I do think the protagonist really got what she wanted. I don't know if the fact that people, in addition to wanting to consume her music and her art, which was probably the goal for her initially, I don't know if the fact that people also want to consume her like body, I don't know if that's bothering her or not. For some people, I think that could really, really bother them. But for other people, I think they can ignore it, but be aware of it and know when to use their sugar venom. That's just something I wanted to point out, something that I'm thinking about. But I do think they got what they wanted. Maybe it's coming with things that she doesn't like people wanting to consume her, but also maybe she's chill with it. The protagonist said she swore she would chase it until she was dead. She was very committed to her dream. There was no plan B for her. I'm not reading this as being about Lana Del Rey directly, so none of the comments I'm making are meant to be about Lana Del Rey. I don't know her personal life, but this is about a protagonist who was pursuing becoming a musical artist. We don't know if the protagonist's American dream was to be able to live off of her art, to express and share her art with the world, or if her dream was to gain fame. Those are two very distinct goals to have. I think once you achieve becoming a successful musical artist, the fame is going to come with it. But there's people that really just want the fame, and then there's other people who are really in it for the integrity of the art. There's people who also want both. There's a lot of layers to this, and there's an endless number of ways to extrapolate out these lyrics. I heard the streets were paved with gold. That's what my father said. This is really interesting. Paved with gold is an idiom. So if some place is paved with gold, then that means it's easy to become rich and successful at that location. So you can interpret it in that way. You can also interpret that not in relation to the idiom, and this interpretation is the one I'm a little bit more partial towards, just because I enjoy a good metaphorical moment. Let's think about a ground literally covered with gold. Gold is very expensive, right? Gold is used to create jewelry, things of value, things you wear, things you adorn yourself with. The ground is dirty. People are walking on there with their shoes. Their shoes have been all over the place. Animals could be walking all over there. We also have the elements. We have rain, maybe snow, maybe hail. I don't know the climate of this place. When you have things made of gold, you want to take very good care of them. You can clean the ground, but it's gonna get dirty because it's like literally the ground. So if the ground is covered with gold, how rich and perhaps how out of touch would a city be to pave the ground with actual gold? How rich would someone be for gold to have literally no value to them? If their ground is made of gold, what are their walls made out of? What about their roofs? So the location we're talking about here is wherever the American dreams can come true. Or we can also think about this location, the streets are paved with gold, as a location that your American dream will take you to. Or it could be referring directly to Hollywood in the case of the protagonist. So you can think about it in the idiomatic way as a place of opportunity, which is very valid in this context. It makes perfect sense. Or you can also think about it in a little bit of a metaphorical way, just kind of breaking it down. This is also kind of a more negative way, I guess. The fact that the streets are paved with gold is reflective of the type of people that live there. And at first glance, if somewhere is paved with gold, that may give you a very positive impression. It may make you feel important if you're walking on gold. However, if you perhaps stay there for a long time, you'll maybe notice that the people there don't really value much if they're willing to walk on gold. Right? So that could be kind of like a foreshadow in that way. I'm really extrapolating this out. I think the intent was the idiomatic way to think about it. However, this did come to mind for me, and I like thinking about it in that way, even though I think the intent was the first way, the idiomatic way I mentioned. As always, I would love to know what you think about this. So feel free to tell me down below. The protagonist is saying her father told her this. This is getting a little bit more intimate because we're getting a little bit of background about the protagonist's personal life, about her childhood, kind of mystify the American dream in a way and mystify the protagonist getting her dream. It's like a fairy tale. It's put on a pedestal. And, you know, it's very good to have goals and to think of something highly, but I always think it's dangerous to put anything on a pedestal, whether it's a person or a goal, because whatever's on the pedestal is going to have power over you. Even if what's on the pedestal is not a person, even if it's a goal or a place, it's going to mystify it too much. I think that puts in too much idealism and not enough logic and realism. And I think that could be dangerous because I think that would make you a little bit naive. If you are like worshiping something or putting it on a pedestal, you want it so badly that people can take advantage of you, or you may not notice like red flags or situations that don't serve you. So that's another thing we can think about here. However, this could also just not be that deep. It could just showcase how badly the protagonist has wanted this and for how long they wanted this. And the fact that her father is mentioned, there's like a mention of family, which makes it even more intense and significant. The fact that she's achieved this goal. Maybe her father was trying to achieve this goal and he wasn't able to, and now she is. There's a lot of ways we can think about this. The latest Lana Del Rey analysis I posted was the song Ride. I will link it down below if you're interested. In that song, that protagonist also talked about her father. The lyric in that song said, hold on, let me look it up. I don't want to say it wrong. Dying young and playing hard, that's the way my father made his life in art. We don't know for sure if the protagonists in both of these songs are the same. It's possible, but I do find it interesting that the mention of a father is here again. It's a similar sort of thing where the father has said something or set an example and the protagonist is wanting to follow in their footsteps in a way. I just wanted to point that out. Verse 4. What did I even do right now? Like, what is this? Verse 4. No one even knows what life was like. Now I'm in LA. And it's paradise. This verse is parallel to verse 2. It's talking about the protagonist's past a little bit. The fact that no one knows what the protagonist's life was like before she achieved her dreams gives me a sense of loneliness and isolation. And what I mean by that is that the protagonist is alone in knowing her struggles. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes maybe you don't want everyone to know if you had a lot of hardships, or you just don't want to talk about it, so you keep it to yourself. If we extrapolate this out a little bit, maybe the fact that the protagonist's life was so different and so difficult before, maybe that's making it a little bit hard for her to connect with the new types of people around her. Perhaps the people she's around have lived a life that was more relaxed and more stable, and the protagonist can tell that they wouldn't ever really understand what she's been through before. And I'm not saying that all successful people lead privileged and perfect lives. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that it's possible the protagonist may feel out of place where she is, and that could be just due to her past experiences. It could be like Nomad from A Cinderella Story, Chad Michael Murray, when he was IMing Hilary Duff, where he's like, I could be in a sea of people and feel alone. If you watch my videos regularly and you haven't watched at least one Hilary Duff movie by now, I don't know what you're doing. Get it together. And as always, this lyric could not be that deep. It could just be said in context. It doesn't matter what I think, right? It matters to me, whatever way you want to think about it. It's valid. It's chill. Now I'm in LA and it's paradise. Paradise, it's like heaven. Everything is perfect. It's idyllic. It's picturesque. It's like 100% wonderful. It's like a dream. I finally found you. I think the you here is referring to the paradise. She's finally found her paradise, her dreams, her idea of a perfect, ideal life. And it says, oh, sing it to me. And then we have repetition of the chorus. In this context, when it says, oh, sing it to me, another way to interpret it, in addition to what I mentioned earlier, maybe she wants this to be sung because it's like a celebration for her, reminding her of her successes. Or maybe she's asking the people to sing the song that got on the radio that allowed her to have this life. You can interpret the song in like a more pure, cute way, or in like a slightly darker way, or somewhere in the middle. Again, it all just depends on what resonates with you. But it sounds like this protagonist really, really wanted to achieve this, like really, really badly. So I'm happy she found it. Like, I think that's wonderful and amazing. She must feel very relieved. I do wonder how long this feeling of paradise will last, because nothing in life is 100% perfect. You know what I mean? Maybe because the protagonist is coming from years and years of hardship, working towards her goal, anything in comparison to what she went through is paradise. The concept of paradise is relative based on your perspective and your past experiences. So that's another layer to think about if you'd like. Then we have repetition of the chorus. Then we have a very cool tempo change. And then we have the bridge. The bridge consists of repeated lyrics. There's a bit of a tempo change that I mentioned, and it's a little bit faster. It's a little bit more like energetic in my opinion. To me, that makes the bridge feel a little bit different. It's kind of like the protagonist was not explaining herself, but she was talking through her experiences in all of the verses previous, and now she's just kind of repeating it, but she's like this about it. She's like more chill and more at ease about it. She's just enjoying it a little bit more. I find the lyrics repeated in the bridge to be less heavy than they perhaps were in the previous verses. I do think when it says, I finally found you, I think it's referring to her dream life. I do think she's kind of personifying that here. It does say, oh, sing it to me at the end of the bridge, and then the chorus is repeated 2 times. So every time the chorus is repeated, right before it, it says, sing it to me. I find that really interesting, and I, again, go back and forth about how I interpret that. I mentioned the ways I think about it earlier in this video. I'm trying to see if I interpret any of the repeated lyrics in the bridge as really, really differently. I don't necessarily think I have anything new to add here. However, it is interesting to me to think about whether the protagonist is being like 100% genuine. And when I say genuine, I don't mean that she's like lying, but if she is very earnest and is coming kind of from a place of insecurity when she's saying, how do you like me now? Because that lyric could be read like in a softer way or in a sassy way. The softer way, and I'm not an actress, but it could be like, how do you like me now? Like, do you like me or something? But the sassier way, it's like, how do you like me now? You know, there's different tones to that. So I think about that a lot. I personally think that the protagonist has awareness. And again, I'm kind of interpreting it like this because I enjoy sassy lyrics, and I enjoy like a little bit of like an edge to the emotions in lyrics. I just like that. So that's why I'm interpreting them that way. With the vitamin lyric, I also think that shows a lot of awareness. So I don't think I necessarily interpret any line in the bridge very differently than what I've already said. It just makes me think about the protagonist and what her true emotions are. You know what I mean? I feel like the protagonist is someone who is like kind of mysterious and alluring. You don't really know what she's thinking. That's, I think, why I sometimes go back and forth between whether there's sassiness or just a lot of like genuine earnestness in these lyrics. There's nothing wrong with either one, they're just different. So we have the chorus repeated 2 times after this, and then the song ends. So it ends with the lyric, "How do you like me now?" To me, that's like a power play sort of lyric. It's like, look at me now. Shout out to all my haters, except not really. That's the vibe I get from it. To sum up, this song is about fame and achieving your dreams. In the context of this song, it's about a musical artist who has become very popular because her song is on the radio. I think that this song has some earnest moments, but I do also think this is a little bit of a commentary on how people judge you by the type of success you have. The protagonist song is now on the radio, so now she's an actual person, so people will actually respect her now. That's one way to think about it. And as I mentioned earlier, we can take this into our own lives by thinking about this song as about any sort of success. We can think about how people treat you differently based on how successful you are, how famous you are, or how many followers you have on your Instagram, how many likes you have. People can judge you on what you wear, how expensive your outfits are. It's like those people that look you up and down and you can tell that they're like calculating the price of every item of clothing you're wearing. Like, that's impressive, but also like, why? A lot of people place value on another human being based on very shallow things that are not really that important in my opinion. Like, I think a person's character and their principles and their morals are much more important. However, some people value more materialistic things, dollar signs, fame, influence more. And listen, I'm not saying that like having money and, you know, having power is bad. Those things can be neutral. It all depends on the person who has those things. That's what determines whether those things are good or bad. I think this song is more about the public and the outside world and maybe less about the protagonist. I personally view it a little bit more as a sort of commentary. I would love to know what you think. Please let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Feel free to like this video and subscribe if you feel inclined. And if you want to check out my services, they will be linked down below. Bye!